Hello, everyone. Welcome to That GD Show.
Mm-hmm. Howdy, howdy. How's it going?
Hey, Genevieve.
Hey.
You're in a new studio there. What you got going there? I
like
it.
Thank you. Yeah, I rearranged my office. So now I am in my library and music room instead of in the black void that I was broadcasting in earlier.
Well, things we've learned from last week. Don't take calls that haven't been screened.
And don't call people back. It's a trap.
It's a trick. It's a trick. So we're learning. Thanks for coming in, everybody. We've got a great guest. I don't want to keep him waiting in the green room very long. He'll eat all the M&Ms. I know him. He'll eat them all. So let's bring on our guest tonight. What do you say?
Yes, I'd say so.
Hi, guys.
It's the Seth Andrews. Hey, Seth.
I'm just so glad to be among friends. Thanks for letting me come and play along, my friend.
Good to see you again. Say hello to Genevieve. You haven't met her, have you?
Hi, Genevieve. It is so nice to meet you, and thanks for your patience. I'd kind of scrambled here getting into the show. I just one of those. Do you ever have those days where you're 10 minutes behind everything?
Oh,
and it's a total first world problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't get all of it done during the day, but I just sort of rushed in here. So I'm hoping that I'm not too frazzled or fragmented. But man, I've been looking forward to this pretty much all week. And
good.
So thanks for letting me play along.
You were probably out walking Gracie. How's Gracie doing, by the way?
She's such a sweet girl.
Oh, the sweet baby girl. She's got the cutest
For
two
those
dogs.
who don't know, Gracie is a foster failed dog that a year ago we were keeping for a cousin. That didn't work out. The dog wasn't good with their young children. And so we sort of ended up with this Shih Tzu by default, not wanting a dog, not needing a dog, but we just fell for her. And so she's gone from being timid and afraid of everything, including the leash, to hopping on the leash and walking the entire neighborhood, running the stairs. She's been just a real joy. So she's come alive. She gets to be a dog in the Andrews household. Thanks for asking.
I tell you what, dogs in the Andrew household are lucky, I'll have to say. They get treated well.
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I'm a sucker. I've got 4 dogs. I apologize for everybody watching if you hear them eventually, but it's they don't totally get that it's quiet time. But I also have a rescue that had to learn how to be a dog for the first time, and it's such a joy when you see that happen. It really just warms my heart.
Yeah, I love rescue stories, and so I appreciate you guys asking about Gracie. And then we've got little Linus. He's also a rescue, and they're just little brother and sister bounding about. You may hear them; they may bark at random, or
that makes the show that much more.
Okay. All right,
friend, that much more. We're not all about making it professional. We're just. And Linus, it's funny. I love the name Linus because he's about the size of a teacup.
He's my little Bella. He is 6 pounds of ankle-high death. That's what he thinks he is. We're walking down the street. Somebody's got a pit bull or a big lab, And of course, I'm a big dog kind of person. And I used to think I would never have small dogs, but Linus doesn't know the difference.
Right.
He just throws his chest out and he's like, "Come on, let's go.
Come on, let's do this.
You wanted this Thunderdome." And I'm like, dude, you are a Scooby snack for this dog. You would not last 10 seconds, but he does not know this. And so fortunately, I am there as his guardian to prevent carnage and chaos. But he's a good boy. So.
Well, Seth, before we do calls tonight, I hope we get some good calls. You never know with a call-in show, you know that. But I just want to chat a little bit with you about some of the things you've written about, some of the things you've talked about in the past. I mean, you live in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
That is about as middle of America as it gets. What is that? I've often been intrigued by that the paradox of that. One of the most preeminent atheists in the world today, living in Faithville.
Yeah.
You know, Oral Roberts and Kenneth Hagin and Kenneth Copeland's in Texas, but he's a protege of Kenneth Hagin, I think. What is that like? How does that feel? What is that like?
I'm asked that question from time to time. I think people are like, why don't you just get out of there? Because they know it's Jesus from my, front door and hit 3 churches. And Dave came by and visited. So, I mean, it's the first 3 questions that they ask you, what's your name? What do you do for a living? Where do you go to church?
Mm-hmm.
And it is frustrating. And I found, especially during COVID, I have felt over the last year and a half, a greater sense of loneliness is not the word I'm looking for. It's kind of a melodramatic word in this context. I don't mean for that, but isolation, where before I was able to kind of scratch the community itch by going out and connecting with people one-on-one, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, voice-to-voice. But here, the limited interactions I have with people, almost all of them, in fact, I would say pretty much all of them, are church-going, devout believers. And I can't help but feel that sense of isolation, that even though everybody's kind and everybody's nice, if they know I'm an atheist, there's kind of that subtext to everything that's said. It's kind of under the surface. It's hard to describe, I think, for those who haven't experienced it. But the truth is that it's frustrating living in a place that has an international airport that flies nowhere internationally, right? I mean, to get anywhere, I got to go through a hub: Dallas, Cincinnati, Denver, Atlanta, blah, blah, blah. And it's frustrating that there's so much Jesus and there's so much Trump and there's so much of that kind of stuff going on around here. But it's also, the people are kind and friendly, and the cost of living is amazing. I mean, I was able to get much more house in Oklahoma than I could get in Colorado or in California or in Florida. And as I work from home and I've got a house, I want to make sure that the house I live in is one I can be comfortable in. And I also take a little bit of pleasure in being sort of this antithesis to the Jesus-iness that's going on all around me. It's healthy for these people to know that people like me exist. It's healthy for them to know that there is an atheist who lives in the neighborhood, who plays on the tennis team, who is part of the gathering, who is part of the community. And, that way they realize that there is sort of another point of view. There's another perspective. And I take a lot of pleasure in being that guy. I could be an atheist where it doesn't matter, but I'd rather be an atheist where it kind of does. And it's kind of a thing, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
And you've got the right, in my view, you've got the right tone for that. You're known as someone who is even-keeled and kind and generous, and it would be hard for your next door neighbor's a worship leader in a church, right? Yeah. So it'd be hard for these people to look at you and say you're an atheist and I'm going to be angry at you or I'm going to treat you a certain way. With you being the way that you are, I think that's hard for them to do that. I think they probably don't know what to do with you.
Isn't that the truth? They sound like my parents, like my mother. My father just passed, but my family doesn't know what to do with me either. It's one of those things that is an interesting social experiment. And you and I have seen, I'm sure Genevieve has seen this as well, where if you other somebody, like if I encounter a believer and they encounter the atheist and it's on the internet and we're this 2-dimensional avatar, we don't know each other, we don't see each other in 3 dimensions, and we have an encounter. Pretty often those encounters are kind of binary. It's off on A, B, black, white, yes, no. We don't allow for the humanity in a lot of those types of people.
Right.
But if somebody gets to know me before they realize I'm an atheist, Seth's on the tennis team. He's a good guy. He loves his wife, and he seems to really have a real sense of balance about him, and he loves doing what he does. Blah blah blah. There's Linus. Once they see me and they enjoy my company and they see that I'm an honorable man, then they find out I'm an atheist. It's a whole lot harder to put me in a box.
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
And Ryan Cragen is a sociologist at the University of Tampa, and he's done a lot of research on how minds are changed. And his research has determined that the number one factor for changing people's perceptions is not data. It's not throwing bullet points at them. It's changing their social circle. So being introduced to an atheist, being introduced to someone who was an other, who is not like them, who is someone they may have been taught to fear, being introduced, getting to see them in 3 dimensions is the number one thing that might change their perceptions about that person. And that's been the case. I had a guy say to me the other day, he said, you're a better Christian than most of the Christians.
That's what a compliment. What a compliment that is. And
I said, well, I take that in the spirit in which it is intended. I appreciate the intent behind that. I think it's an exercise in seeing each other as human beings first, and then trying to figure out our value systems, and then we can debate the bullet points after that.
Yeah. So before I talked a little bit more about this former Fox Christian and ask him some other things, Genevieve, I've had a chance to interact with Seth a lot and visit with him, but what burning question might you have for Seth Andrews?
Oh dear. Burning question. I mean,
anything that you've wanted to know or you would like to talk to him about.
I do just have to say everything that you just said resonates so heavily with me, because I lived in the Bible Belt for about 5 years. I moved away last year. And that really was the key, was sort of stoking their cognitive dissonance by being a friend, being a neighbor, and I wouldn't necessarily talk about my lack of religion. I wanted them to see me as like the kind, generous person they would have dinner with, and then say, wait a minute, but you're not a Christian. But I thought to be a good person, you had to be. So thank you for doing that in the community of Tulsa, because yes, that is Jesus in Trump Town.
No, it's so true. It's amazing what happens when we start to search for maybe some shared values and interests before we look at our labels. Yeah. Because my worship pastor neighbor, we stand hugely apart theologically. He is one of the most devout believers I've ever seen, and I've met a lot. But beyond that, we had him and his wife over for dinners a while back, but we just had a ball. He's kind, he's good, he loves his people, he would do anything for you, he's generous of heart, he's charitable, he's just a stellar human being. If I had allowed the label to sort of wipe him off the table so that I didn't consider him as a friend or an associate or a neighbor, what a tragedy that would have been.
Yeah.
So I wonder about him, for instance, do you know if he's ever looked at any of your material?
Oh, he's a listener. It's weird.
How does he put that together with what
not explode? How does he not explode? I don't know. I'm out walking Linus. Right? Linus is on the leash and I see him. Hey, how's it going? He said, hey man, I heard that show you did about such and such, and that one lady called, and man, the way you handled that, she was just so brokenhearted, and you were so kind and compassionate. And I just wanted to tell you that. I'm like, so he wasn't just blowing smoke and saying, no, great show.
Right.
He knew a specific, and he's just a podcast nut. He just listens to about anything he can get his hands on, including my show. Now, it hasn't caused him to waver at all in his faith. I don't know if this is, I don't know if he's shoring up his own faith by listening to counterpoints of view. There's nothing malicious. There's nothing underhanded about the way he's listening, but he's very aware of me. We've had theological discussions here and there. Neither one of us really budged. I don't think either one of us were all that impressed with the other's point of view. Right. But it was done in kindness with goodness. And at the end, it was like, man, it was so nice talking to you. Thanks for the exchange.
Yeah, I guess, I have a pastor brother in East Texas, evangelical charismatic pastor, the same tribe I was a part of for years. He knows where I'm at. I know where he's at. We've had discussions, but like you said, neither of us budge on it. But I guess the bottom line is that nothing I've said moves the needle with him. He's not impressed with any of my arguments against Christianity. Same way that your neighbor seems to not be impressed with anything you've said against Christianity.
I mean, part of it is, Dave, is that there is nothing new under the sun.
Right.
You know, whenever I get into, I watched a debate with Dillahunty against an apologist a couple of nights ago, and I don't know why I'd subject myself to that, because the apologist, it's always the same stuff. It's a different face. They come in and they're like, objective moral standard, and what caused the Big Bang, and abiogenesis, and how do you know the rape of a child is wrong?
Oh, God.
And complexity in the watchmaker and the 747 in a junkyard. I mean, it's the same stuff. It's just over and over and over again. And that's probably one of the frustrations that I have as I see this embrace of belief over knowledge instead of the pursuit of knowledge. But I've made this absolute guarantee. And a lot of Christians say that I'm lying when I say that I am prepared to change my mind if you'll give me a good reason to. And they'll look at me and say, you'd never change your mind. You'll never change. Nothing will ever convince you that there's a God. You're set in your ways. You are absolutely. And I'll look at him and say, you are looking at a man who has in his life changed his mind on the most important critical position, opinion, belief that he had. So don't tell me it's not possible with me, because I was there and it has already happened at least once in my life.
Yeah, I think that is proof that we can change our mind given compelling enough evidence.
Yeah.
We have a call. Let's take a call, and then we can talk more about some of these subjects. You guys good with that?
Yeah.
We've got Chelsea, she, her, North Carolina. Where I am. Wants to thank Dave for helping her get over the fear of living life to the fullest. Okay, let's talk to Chelsea. Hello, Chelsea.
Oh, I was waiting for that beat. How are y'all?
Hey, good.
Hey, Genevieve and Seth.
Hi.
Hi there.
Three.
Yeah. What would you like to chat about?
A number of things I would love to, but I can only do but so much, I imagine. First off, I don't know where to start. Give me a place to start, because I wanted to talk to kind of the whole gang.
Well, you're the
I guess
note here. Go ahead. Just what's on your mind? You have a question for Seth?
Well, yeah, I guess I can start with that. Well, not a question per se, but I wanted to say I appreciate as you were saying earlier about perspective and like how you go about engaging with theists. I love the way you do it, Seth. It speaks to me just like Dave. What would Dave do? It speaks to me.
No, you're very kind. I'm not always that guy. I mean, I do have my days when I just want to reach through and grab him by the shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
Say, what the hell is wrong with you? I mean, I know I come off like Mr. Rogers, and that's cool. I'll take that. But, it's not like I'm a saint when it comes to dealing with the theist. I really do in one-on-ones really try to take more of the street epistemology angle and to look for shared values and shared humanity. But when I look around at the crazy world around me, just know that I also do have my moments where I just am banging my head against the wall and I feel the same frustrations that everybody else feels. And sometimes I just vent. I've done whole radio shows where I'll just pop open the mic and go, I got to talk to somebody about this. And I'll just go nuts for 90 minutes. But I appreciate the kind words very much. They mean a lot to me. Thank you.
Chelsea, your note also, the note here on the screen said you wanted to talk about getting over the fear of living life to the fullest. What does that mean to you?
What that's just what they put in. Elliot put in. Are they okay with me saying that?
Sure. No, that's fine. Whatever you want to talk about is fine.
Because that's the cost screener. I probably should say that.
Let me focus you, Chelsea. Hang on, real fast. Let's narrow this down. What is it that is most primary on your mind right now? Did you call for a comment or a question? What is it that you most want to talk about?
Thank you for that, narrowing it down. That makes it a lot easier.
Good.
What
Okay.
is it that you most
I
want
wanted
to
to
talk
thank
about?
Dave. Yeah, I'm getting ready to say it.
Okay.
I was going to say, I wanted to thank Dave for helping me get over my fear of driving on highways, believe it or not. Because what would Dave do in, because you only got one life, I don't really know what to say, but just a heartfelt thank you. Because recently I got over that fear, and I wouldn't have been able to go to an atheist debate in another town without getting lost along the way. And because driving on the highways, I used to be terrified of that, absolutely terrified, mortified. But after listening to you, I just told myself, I'm not going to let this keep me from doing things that I want to do in life. So I went out and did it. I ended up using my phone, obviously, since I'm not that great at directions. But I ended up doing it. I got it done. Go me.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, I thank you for saying that, and I'm glad that something I said or talked about helped you to realize that life is too short to let fears like that hold you back and keep you paralyzed, if you will. But I'm glad you did that, and that's a big step for you, it sounds like. So good for you.
Mm-hmm. I don't know much about Genevieve. I just recently got a hold of the show. How did you come into the picture? Not trying to be rude here. I'm just curious.
That's okay. Yeah, out of the out of the three of us, I'm definitely the nobody, the new one on the scene. I'm a lifelong atheist that moved to the Bible Belt, worked in politics, was shocked by the cultural shock, and wanted to demystify atheism and leftists, and do that to all of the conservative Christians in my life that I know and love. And then I started talking about it online, and Dave found me, and here we are. So. Yeah.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
You're on it. I'm riding Dave's right now, but you can find me on TikTok. It's where all the kids are right now. So I'm at Genevieve's TikTok. The link should be in there.
TikTok.
But,
okay.
Yeah, but
all the cool kids
much.
are on TikTok, and that's how Genevieve and I connected on TikTok, and I really loved her content there. I loved her story about deciding. Seth and I, Seth, we didn't have a choice. We were in this thing, and we had to swim our way out of it. Genevieve dove into the water knowing what it was like, knowing that it was a cesspool, because she felt compelled to get involved in the conversation, realizing what was going on in this country. So
yeah, I mean,
you're a great many things, Genevieve. You are not a nobody. I think you have the voice you have, the perspective you have, the gifts that you have are just as valid as anybody's. And so when I heard you say that, I died a little inside. And I
thought, no. Self-deprecation is in my nature. But wow, you really are the atheist Mr. Rogers. That was You're so kind.
That's nice.
Well, Chelsea, I appreciate your call, and it's really good to hear from you. And call back anytime, and keep facing those fears and overcoming them. Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Okay. Well, can I say one more thing? Can I say one more thing before I go?
Sure.
Okay. It's a little bit something funny, but it's a fact. Remember, folks, if you can smell a fart and you have particles from someone's rectum inside you. Until next time, friends. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chelsea. Take care.
I'm not sure I understood what that meant, but whatever.
I have a question for Genevieve. Can I? You mentioned something about demystifying atheism, and you said leftism.
Yeah.
I had this, I get a lot of this because I came out of this sort of hardcore right wing Ann Coulter, Rush Limbaugh, Fox News
Mhm.
conservatism. I was that guy, I was the Tea Partier. I was that
Yes.
dude. But once I sloughed off my religious mantle and I had to go back and think, what is it that I value? Like, not what did my religion mandate that I think about politics and the right to die and the death penalty and LGBT rights and abortion, et cetera. But what do I think about it? What are my values? And as I went back to them, I reverse engineered what I had done and realized it was all God speak. I hadn't done any of my own thinking. And I just ended up on almost every front a liberal on these issues. I think humanism has a strong liberal
Mhm.
bias. I take a lot of heat from some very upset non-liberals for saying that and for having that reflected in what I do. Do you encounter that? Do either of you encounter that when you're out there? Somebody they're like, well, when did atheism equal liberalism? And I'm like, I've never made that position. I say, I think humanism leans more, though, into liberal values. I don't know if you guys have ever encountered that out in the wild or not.
I certainly have, whether that's in person discussing politics and suddenly somebody tells me, "Oh, this must be Satan that is filling your mind," or the liberal universities are poisoning and brainwashing you, to online other atheists who are conservative and giving us flack. But I do agree that I think that in general, reality tends to have a liberal bias, which is what makes it so frustrating when you're discussing politics with people who like to talk smack about the mainstream media, which I've got plenty of criticisms of course. But when you just look at raw facts and data and look at the world around you and think about how a normal, kind, empathetic person would go about solving some of these problems, then yeah, you are going to find yourself on the left. And America does not have a leftist party. We really don't. We've got centrism and right-wing extremism, which I'm sure you know all too well. It was born out of that conservative radio culture of the 90s and has just kind of ballooned to, Trumpism and where we are today. But yeah, I get flack for that all the time.
I hear, well, I'm sorry you've exchanged one religion for another.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at it, I mean, which party is trying to co-opt the entire government for the purposes of Christian nationalism to install a specific religion? Well, it's not the liberals. Which political party is an advocate for LGBT people and gay marriage? It's not the conservatives. Which party is protecting a woman's right to choose and bodily autonomy? It's not the conservatives. Which party is allowing for the legalization of recreational drugs or promoting right to die issues? There's another bodily autonomy issue. Is on the right side of foreign policy, where they're not using the Bible to excuse like the validation of Israel, et cetera. Well, it's not the conservative. I mean, I just go point by point by point. And I'm like, look, I'm not being religious about this. I've just simply thought through each of the issues, and this is where I land. And that has been an interesting social experiment, I think, over the past 12 years, watching the reactions there.
Well, yeah, it's a natural transition, because I'm looking at your book, Seth, your latest one, the Fox News Christian book.
I didn't ask him to hold it up either.
No, I did that on purpose. And if you were a Fox News advocate, like me, I wasn't like a faithful watcher, but I was a Rush Limbaugh listener one of those days. I leaned to the right as a conservative Christian. That's kind of what I had to do. I had to be against abortion. I had to be against gay marriage. I had to line up with the party line, if you will. And when I let go of faith, I didn't set out to be a liberal or to run to the left. I just ended up in that direction, because if you care about people, that's what's going to happen. You're going to end up in places that you want to advocate for the LGBTQ plus community, because you realize they're humans and they have as much right to a happy life as we do. And who are we to judge them? So by definition, I become liberal. It's by default, I guess.
Yeah.
And we can see it reflected in COVID protections,
Yes.
right? In the California recall, they went and they showed, okay, here's how everybody voted in the recall election. By the way, here's also COVID infection rates. And it was overwhelmingly skewed to the right. The people who are more pro-science, and I think who are more interested in protecting other human beings that are not in their in-group, that are not kin, but are part of the human kin, the human tribe. That tends to lean more into the humanistic, which I think leans into liberal. I didn't mean to totally derail the train, but it just
I don't want to get off on politics.
She triggered me.
She triggered
me.
I will
baited
say,
you, didn't she? She baited you.
Before we get off that topic, I will say the ultimate irony, I think, though, is, just as you listed off all of these basic ideas of, what a decent person would support, the irony is, which party wants to take care of the least of us? Which party wants to love their neighbor and their enemy as themselves? I mean, it's so funny to me. I was asking a young Christian friend of mine who is she's not politically savvy, but her family is very Fox News, very pro Fox News. And I had asked her, why are you a conservative? She's like, well, because I'm a Christian. And I asked her, what does conservatism mean to you? And she didn't answer with, any sort of like political philosophy. It was like, well, it means being a Christian. And it's like, no. I think even as a Christian, if you really sat down and thought about the real teachings and message of Jesus, then you too would line up with these secular humanists on the left.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, we have a call along this line. Maybe they've been listening to us and they called to talk about it. Anyway, let's talk to Karaya. I hope I said that right. I probably didn't. She, her, in Missouri, sees liberal bias and has a friend who has opposite views as her that she struggles with. Let's see if we can get Karaya. Hello?
Hi.
Karaya? How do you say your name? I'm sorry.
Korea.
Korea. I butchered it. I'm so sorry.
Karaya, how are you?
That is all right. I'm doing good. Genevieve, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to hear you and see you call in.
I wanted to call in every episode, but the message was saying like no phones, only headsets. And so I got really confused and thought, I was like, well, I don't own a headset, so I guess I'll just watch. But I've been watching every episode. I love you guys.
Thank you.
But yeah, and I'm really excited Seth Andrews is on today.
Thank you.
Well, what would you like to talk about?
Yeah, so I definitely, I have been watching, so I definitely agree with what you guys are saying. I get really frustrated with, especially because what you were just even saying a few minutes ago, people just automatically assuming if you're a Christian that you're conservative, when I grew up in a very liberal church. So my parents were the odd man out voting for the Republican Party because my church was all about just trying to help the poor and help the needy and just passing out free light bulbs without even telling them about Jesus, just adding a flyer to their church. So they just wanted to give people what they needed. And so it's always really frustrating me. And I think it really just comes down to pro-life. I think that's because for me, I was I agreed with the liberal side on when I was a Christian, I agreed with all of the liberal policies, but I had such a strong pro-life conviction at the time that I just couldn't vote for a Democratic candidate. And since becoming an atheist, I have educated myself about this topic quite a bit. So I don't hold those same, I don't hold it the same way anymore. I'm now pro-choice. But yeah, for my dad, that is the issue. That is the defining issue for him. And I think that's that way for a lot of Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And people know that those, I think, who are what Catherine Stewart has called the power worshipers, know that. So that is one of the reasons that we hear the horror stories, the absolute fabrications about babies ripped from the wombs as the liberals twirl their mustaches and laugh maniacally. Ha, ha,
Mhm.
ha, I've killed another baby. Ripped from the womb. We heard this, we've heard it off and on for decades. There is utility in scaring people and othering people on the pro-life, pro-choice issues.
Right.
Because then if you can get you to become a single issue voter based on essentially what is a non-truth or a lie, then everything else that they do and say won't matter. I think we've seen this over the past half decade. So if you become that single issue voter and you're terrified of what those libs are going to do to the unborn, then everything else is off the table. You've got them essentially in a binary model. And, my family, when I go to them and I say, look, what would Jesus have said about this? How would Jesus? He wouldn't have endorsed that. Jesus didn't remotely represent this. For them, it didn't matter as long as they weren't a Democrat.
Because there's no way that he would endorse, Jeff Bezos making like $5 million a minute when, we're like when the minimum wage is like $7.25. Like there's no way. Like the stories he told completely contradicted that.
Jesus was so much kinder to the immigrant, to the poor and to the needy and the hungry. I mean,
Jesus was an immigrant.
Yeah, he was a refugee.
So Jesus had his problems.
Yeah, and
there are some problematic Jesus verses, but the best incarnation of Jesus, he'd look around at Christians today and go, "What the hell's wrong with you people?" Like, I think he would actually say that. What the hell is wrong with my children? I think
is that his accent? Is that the Middle Eastern accent?
What the hell is going on with my children? That's how they spoke in Jerusalem.
I know it is. We've got recordings from that era. I've heard those.
I learn a new thing every day.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Forgive me. Go ahead.
I'm just
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to briefly mention too that as long as women have been getting pregnant, abortion has existed. We've got records of abortions going back 5,000 years. If Jesus really cared, he would have said something. If that was really the hill that he would die on, like that would have been mentioned at some point. And yet, no, instead he talks about taking care of the poor and not judging people and, being kind of racist here and there. I don't fully stand Jesus, but you get the point. As you were saying, Correa.
Right. Well, like even, I want to say it was Plato who was seeing these women who were like constantly having babies that like they couldn't afford. And they would like, or God forbid it was a girl, like then they would just like either like leave them out in the woods to die, and like Plato was the first one that was like, hey, like if you don't want this baby, it is much kinder to abort it than to just leave it out to die, or to get like to freeze to death or get like eaten by wolves. And yet like the Republican Party, like they don't actually want to provide any assistance for the people that would need it if they're going to be having these children. It's like they just want to keep creating cheap labor for like this capitalistic system. So yeah, no, it gets I get really frustrated.
I wrote an entire chapter about abortion. I'm sorry, forgive me. Go ahead. I thought you were done and there was a delay.
Sorry,
My fault. No. Please go ahead.
Well, just that, like, so someone who's been my best friend for almost 6 years now, she, up until just even recently, she was an atheist. She became a theist recently, and then, but like she has kept her like political views, and she has been like a hardcore libertarian and believes like all taxation is theft and that like everything should just be run by like unregulated capitalism. I'm like, millions of people would die. Like in that system, millions of people would die. And she's basically like, well, that sucks to suck. And like she refuses to get vaccinated because she thinks the government is using it to push socialist policies. And she doesn't want to support that. So she won't get vaccinated. And I'm like, you're a server. You could get like, even if you we're got COVID and we're fine, you could give it to someone who wouldn't be fine. And she's like, well, that's not my problem. That's their fault because they're the ones who chose to go out. And I'm just like, and it's just like, I can't, like, and I'm sure you guys encounter this too, where it's like, you can't teach someone empathy. They either like have it or they don't.
I mean,
like you can't, like, you could try to explain it, but doesn't mean that they're gonna, like, you can't make them understand it.
So I would just disagree only because empathy is like a muscle, and you do need to work it out unless you have, a disorder in which empathy is an emotion that will always be absent from your life. It's definitely something that people can grow, and it's usually through experience, through expanding their circle, through thinking outside of the box and putting themselves in other situations. But some people are just very resistant to that. I think that's one of the more extreme cases I've heard of somebody just saying, well, millions of people will die, but,
Well,
as long as I don't have to pay taxes.
Oftentimes it takes a personal experience to move your needle on empathy. When
Mhm.
something happens to you or someone you care about, and then it affects you personally and affects you emotionally, then you begin to change your views on it. Like a parent who's been a staunch conservative and against gay marriage and finds out all of a sudden his child comes out as gay. And then what are you going to do? And so I've heard of those kinds of things happening, or being against the vaccine, and all of a sudden your parent or some loved one gets COVID and dies because they refuse to get vaccinated. It does affect your empathetic level at some point when you experience things personally, I think. Now, some people maybe not, but a lot of people do, I think.
Yeah, I don't know, because like she has been like, in some ways I'm really proud of her, because like she's going to she's been sober since February, and she she's in therapy, she's trying to like get help, but she's also learning things about herself, and like she started sharing more of it with me, and she was just like, yeah, I just have trouble believing other people are real. Like, it's like we're all robots and we're just going through the motions, but we happen to be made through of like human flesh, or like we're aliens or something. She has like such a disconnect with other people. And so it just makes me wonder, like, how many other people are like that. And then like I said, I mean, this has been like my best friend for almost 6 years. And yet, like, the things that she's saying are not like small things. Like, I've told some other people and they were like, well, I'm not trying to tell you to not be friends with her, but if someone said those kinds of things, I probably wouldn't be their friend anymore. And I'm like, I get why you're saying that.
It's a tough one. Seth, any parting thoughts for Korea on how to handle her friend?
Well, obviously, I don't think, and I feel a little bit that you feel a responsibility to try to fix it. And, I've got to try to pull this woman out of the mire and allow her to see the light. And I'm frustrated that this is so basic and she doesn't get it. And I understand exactly what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you got to remember that it's not on you to change her mind. I think you can and should be truthful about who you are in your disagreements, lovingly, but in your disagreements, and communicate why. I think many times people have been communicated to, and I've been led out of bad ideas into better ideas. I was reasoned out of my unreason when I was a believer. But at the end of the day, that journey is going to have to be her journey. So the best you can do is to set the example and to plead your case. But I think you've got to remember that you don't have to carry the burden of trying to make her think better, to act in a more, productive or more humanistic way. That's really going to have to be on her. And it sucks, and it's not easy, and it's going to be hard to watch. But I think you've got to protect yourself a little bit in this regard. That's just my 2 cents.
That's good advice, Korea. I like that.
Yeah.
And be sure you take care of yourself in that regard.
That is really good advice.
Well, thank you so much for calling in, and good luck with you and your friendship there with her. I hope that something changes.
Thank you, Korea.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I wanted
Bye.
to bring this up. I'm not shilling for the book. What I'm saying is that I've addressed. It took me a long time to get into the abortion issue.
Yeah.
I heard Christopher Hitchens say once that he was squeamish on the abortion issue, and that's a good word for me, because we are talking about the issues relating to personhood, and I want to be on the right side of whatever issue, whatever that is. But I was finally learning some of the, the biology of kind of how it all happens, right? The reproductive process, because we'd heard the horror stories. How accurate were they? I was raised to believe that the second that the egg and the sperm got together, a human soul was created, right? I mean, at conception, that's a human
In the image
soul.
of God, right?
Yeah, a human soul, which is destined for eternity. And when I began to understand that more than half of all fertilized eggs do not come to term in the female body. They are discharged before they're ever born as human babies 9 months later. That then would mean that all those souls were discharged, which would make Yahweh the most prolific abortion doctor in the history of the universe.
Yes.
And that's a perspective I'd never heard before. But I'm like, all these intelligent designers that talk about how that, well, everything's perfectly designed and it's just amazing, and they're upset about abortion, are completely ignoring, one, all the abortions that are going on in the Bible that Yahweh dictated, and two, the fact that his intelligently designed reproductive process has aborted billions upon billions of souls without a word from the Christians. And I don't really understand this.
No, that's a valid thing. I didn't learn about it, all that stuff either, until after I left Christianity, because we were just told certain things and never studied it for myself. And it's been a learning process. Let's take a call from Wade in Texas. He, him thinks the impossible is possible. Hello, Wade.
Hello.
Hello, Wade.
Hi.
How are you doing tonight?
Hi. Just a little nervous just to put that out there, but hi, Dave.
That's
hi,
okay.
Seth.
Hi.
I don't know how to pronounce.
It's Genevieve. It's a hard one.
G, I'm sorry.
G is fine.
So yeah, the topic is a little hard to put in the short form of it. So I thought it would be easier just to say the impossible is possible. It's kind of like ironic or contradicting, but if it's possible for me, that's kind of funny. If it's possible for me to say what I've written down so it's more clear and understanding, so I don't like trail off or anything like that, could I do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you prepared something, sure.
Yeah, I prepared. I had a text message or written it down, and I thought it more clearly earlier today. So this is what I had down. Let me pull it up on my phone. Before I start, this was a conversation I had just the other day, and continued thinking about it, and then I had written it down. So it goes like this. By definition of impossible means not capable of being done. There's other definitions, but as far as this one, it would fit what I'm trying to say. And I continue to say, this would be a correct assessment to say that there are things that are impossible until demonstrated to be possible. Because at the current time of trying to accomplish something with the knowledge we currently have, it is in fact impossible to do something. So before the example that someone gave me was the Wright brothers. So I'm putting it to use, sort of. So before the Wright brothers created the airplane, it was in fact impossible until they demonstrated it to be possible. Now, impossible doesn't mean forever impossible or never possible. However, things can be in fact impossible to which things are not capable of doing at that given time. Does that sound, and that's it, does that sound
I don't have a problem with that.
or
I mean, impossible
anything?
being descriptive instead of prescriptive. I buy that.
Yeah, I think not done yet or not experienced yet is a better way to. I mean, it was impossible to fly to the moon until we did it. I think when you're, I don't know. For me, there have to be certain categories of that. It's like saying it would be impossible to grow a leg back that's been amputated. Would that be an accurate descriptor of something that's impossible?
Or if you see something in a model that already exists, 2 plus 2, it's impossible for 2 plus 2 to equal 5, given how we use mathematics. But I think you're speaking a little bit more in the abstract about setting goals or understanding the universe, etc.
Yeah. And see, the person I was talking to that said that nothing can be impossible or something of the effect that I forgot how their argument actually went, but it was like everything can be possible. It's just that we're lacking the information or time given. And I was somewhat had the counter argument to say that, well, that opens the door to anything being possible. Anything we can imagine or not be true can be true later, just given time. So that just opens a can of worms to anything to be possible.
I don't think that's accurate.
I don't buy that everything is possible given the given time or given an advance in our knowledge. I think there are some things that are simply going to be in violation of the laws of physics or the laws of mathematics or those types of things, and they simply will not work unless you want to go into the infinite regress and we're talking about how we all live in a snow globe that's run by a giant tentacled beast at the corner of I mean, you can what if yourself into oblivion on this.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting academic exercise. I don't know how much practical application it has. I think right now I'd be more interested in trying to root ourselves in the real world into what we know and what we can demonstrate or what we are pursuing in the short run, not saying that, well, everything's possible or will be possible given a matter of time and an increase in our knowledge. I don't think that premise, I think I disagree with the premise. But I think more critical beyond that academic exercise is what advances are we pursuing now and how can they help us in the cause for humanism?
Yeah.
I would
and
agree with that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just going to say, just like Seth had mentioned about, you could go until we're in a snow globe being run by a guy with a tentacle, is that, everything that I perceive is dependent upon my own faculties, and those could be mistaken. This could be a simulation. How do I know I'm on this show? There are so many what ifs that dictate how I perceive the world, and yet if you were to entertain all of those, you wouldn't be able to function. I have to make certain assumptions, and I think that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
And you can do that to the best of your abilities, and within that frame, I think that, sure, technically nothing could be impossible, but if we stick to this idea that, yes, you can't violate the laws of physics, just basic assumptions like that, then I think it is fair to say some things are impossible or unlikely enough to be deemed impossible. But part of being intellectually honest, especially if you're thinking, sort of scientifically, is that you should always allow wiggle room for your mind to be changed in any direction. That's why we have theories, not definitive, set in stone ideas about things like evolution and gravity.
I heard it said once that an open mind is meant to close on something, but not sealed shut, right?
Yeah.
We've opened our mind and we've amassed the evidence, the overwhelming avalanche of evidence for evolution. So we can essentially say that evolution has been demonstrated, but we don't weld our mind shut so that if someday we are presented with some other piece of more compelling evidence, that we don't reopen the examination and go back and do it again. So, it's okay to put an exclamation point on something. Just know we have the eraser
like a door on a hinge or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
Wade, well, I was curious, was this conversation that you were having, was it in the context of biblical impossibility or anything having to do with God?
No, it was a little towards, I think it had some to do with absolutes, and then it came to to the impossible conversation. But for example, like it could be possible that a brain in a vat or stuff like that, and then or the there's no absolutes and shit like that. Sorry if I'm not allowed to cuss, but
Are we all
what you call
plugged into the
And-
matrix kind
Yeah.
of thing?
Huh?
Yeah.
That happened, and my thoughts on that is, well, I think there are absolutes to the fact that how I try to do it, and I might butcher it in the sense that like A equals A, right? That is an absolute or something. It has to be what it is. But there was Brandon the Vet. I was like, they were saying, so the person I was talking to was saying that could be possible, and I was like, well, I don't think we can say that it's possible until proven or demonstrated to be the case, and something like that. But they were still
we
saying
can
that
jump through the solipsistic stuff
we
all
don't
day
know
long.
it's still possible. I was like, I don't know,
I think the most
So-
important thing is, though, let's say we are plugged into the matrix. All right, let's say we are living in the snow globe or whatever. The laws of physics that apply to you still apply to me within this environment. The reality in which we exist, those laws remain intact and in force for all of us equally. So it's still an academic exercise, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's of
and
course we
they
know
had
with
brought
God
up
all things are
Catholicism or
possible.
something like that, and
Yeah.
The apartment I used to live in Nashville was just down the street from a hospital, a Catholic hospital, and they had printed on the side of it, with God all things with God nothing is impossible. And I always thought of the irony of that, in that this hospital was dependent upon the advances of medical science, not God doing the impossible. Because back then, when the scripture was written, there was nobody having a cure for cancer or treating people in any way. People just died at the age of 40 because there was no medicine. And so for them to put that on a hospital, I thought is ridiculous irony, because it's not true that with God all things are possible. It's just not true.
It reminds me of when Oral Roberts, the faith healer, built a hospital in Tulsa. Why would a faith healer need to build a hospital? He's a
It made no
faith
sense.
healer.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. And also, Dave, I mean, I just have a problem with a hospital putting that anywhere, because something that, medical professionals that deal with patients' families, what they have to be really cognizant of is being realistic and not giving false hope. That is such an important part about patient-family relations. I wouldn't set that false hope in stone like that. I think that's, kind of
Pissed
messed
me
up.
off. It pissed me off every time I
Yeah.
drove by. I'd stand out there and throw rocks at them. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, Wade,
There's a hospital in Florida that had a billboard that said faith is greater than cancer. And I found the same irony. This is an organization that is offering science-based treatment for the physical treatment of cancer while selling that faith is greater than cancer. It was a self-canceling message. I've never understood it.
No, I think it's just an incredible irony and a lack of self-awareness for that idea to be put together.
Yeah. And Dave, before I go or whatever, I think you were trying to let me go or so. But you had said something about God doing the impossible or whatever, which sparked an idea. If I could run this through real quick, that I have, kind of like an analogy or what have you, is that I ask theists or people in general. It sounds like a contradiction, but I think it's not. And it's if God knows everything and he can do all things or whatever, can he learn anything? And if he can learn anything, he doesn't know all things. And so which one is it? Is he all knowing, to which he can't learn, or is he capable of learning, to which he doesn't know everything?
This sounds like that. Can God make a rock so big he can't pick it up?
I was exactly thinking of that. The same
But
thing.
I think that's more of a contradiction one, right?
That's awesome.
But I thought this was more logical than a contradiction.
I don't know.
I'll chew on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I think you guys are trying to let me go, so I won't waste any more of your time.
Not
No,
a waste.
no,
Thanks
not
for
a
calling.
waste.
not at all, Wade.
Yeah, this is
Appreciate the
great.
call, bro.
Hey,
All right,
we're
bye.
doing I enjoy those little paradox type questions like that. Especially when you apply them to an omnipotent God. So, and he was like, "Can God learn?" And I found myself thinking, that's actually something I'll bring up at a dinner conversation sometime and just watch everybody spin themselves off into oblivion over it. That's an interesting take.
Well, they're fun philosophical questions to play around with. Where I get irritated is when they're used to plead the case for God or for some kind of God's intervention in our lives and things like that. Because I don't know, I'm like you, Seth. I got a link to that debate that you took the bait. I didn't. I thought, I'm not going to watch this. I'd rather watch a cooking show than watch this, because I love Matt and he's so good at what he does, but I don't know how he does it, because it just makes me want to bang my head against the wall. There's no
can't do a lot of
conversation.
it. I can't do a lot of it. Well, some of it is a question of bandwidth. When you're a content creator, you're producing so much, it's hard to really, like, people will be like, "Hey, can you watch this 2-hour video, or can you read my 400-page book, or can you give me commentary on this?" I'm just like, whoa. So it was really a rarity. And it's also an exercise in frustration when you see that religions had thousands of years to come up with something, anything fresh.
It's the same old arguments over and over again.
Really frustrating.
Yeah. I want to talk before we go. We got another caller, but I want to talk a little bit before I let you go, Seth, about your opinion on what to do with the Fox News Christians. How do we move forward as a people in this country? We are so polarized. We are so divided, more than any time I can remember in my life. How do we get out of this?
Your question to me is, how do we fix the world? Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Let me think about that.
You've got 10 minutes to give us that answer, Seth.
Yeah. We can start small.
It's like, let me ask you this. Have we gone backwards, or just my perception of things?
No, I do have a perspective here. I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Genevieve? Were you gonna?
No. I was just gonna say, you don't need to, fix the world. We can start small and discussing, right-wing Christian nationalism.
Just fix Oklahoma, Seth. For fuck's sake, fix Oklahoma.
Look, I was talking to Andrew Seidel on the Freedom from Religion Foundation broadcast, and he asked a question. I think he actually titled the show, "Do we live in a shared reality?" And I've come to the conclusion, no. I think there are people like us who have our feet planted on terra firma, who are more interested in trusting science and scientists, warts and all, despite its flaws, who are actually better at seeing things as they genuinely are. And I think there is another major faction of people in this country who they're being spoon-fed by the minute propaganda from these alternate reality conduits like Newsmax and OAN and Fox News and right-wing radio. I mean, I'm just now about to release a whole video about 6 right-wing talk radio hosts who were anti-vax and anti-masks who have died of COVID in the last month and a half, right? Well, these people lived in an alternate reality. We don't live in a shared reality. What happens if you don't even have that common ground to start the conversation? I don't have a solution. I used to, and I still think the best way to try to change minds is, again, to integrate ourselves and begin to have conversations, to allow them to see us in 3 dimensions. But there's another part of me that is, and I'm not proud of this, but there are a lot of instances where I'm like, we're just going to have to steamroll over these people to get to achieve the world we want to achieve. And I hate that I feel that way. But there's some people, they're so dogmatic, they're so close-minded, they're absolutely not listening. And I'm like, fine, I'm going to push through you to help build the world that I think that we need to build. And so the answer is, I don't have an answer. I'll continue to engage wherever I can, wherever I am, in the hopes that someone might be listening. But as much or more than that these days, I want to gather with people who are pro-humanity, pro-science, pro-fact, pro-reality, and band with them to try to build the world that we want to see in the days, months, and years ahead.
Is that why you call yourself the Thinking Atheist? Because
I
you
don't. I don't.
You
The
are.
Thinking Atheist. The Thinking Atheist is an icon. I am not the Thinking Atheist.
But you are, Seth, whether you like to admit it or not, you are, because you create these conversations and you call people back to them over and over again. And that is the thing I admire the most about you, is that you just won't let the conversation deviate from that which needs to be talked about to the peripheral stuff, and say, let's focus on the stuff that really matters. Like the previous caller talking about what's impossible in some ethereal world of philosophy and conjecture. And you're saying, but let's talk about what's practical.
Well, some of that's that I'm crap at philosophy.
Well, I am too.
Same here.
But I appreciate that. Coming out of a faith culture, right? Faith is a terrible way to find out what's true.
Yeah.
What's real. And that's what the Thinking Atheist really was. It's a reminder every time I see the icon, and I hope every time other people see the icon, it's an encouragement. Let's think on these things. Let's engage brain. Let's use reason. Let's reject faith as a determiner for anything out there. Faith is terrible when it comes to
I think it makes us dumber. And I don't mean that in an unkind way. When you don't approach life from a rational perspective and you just take it, remember the phrase, take it on faith.
Yeah.
Because an authority told you that. I was remembering when I opened the show, we talked about Tulsa and Kenneth Hagin, and I'm pretty sure that Kenneth Copeland was a disciple of his and kind of followed along after Kenneth Hagin. The younger viewers, maybe you remember Kenneth Hagin, right, Seth?
Oh yeah. His Rhema Bible Church is 8 minutes from my front door.
Right. So, Kenneth Copeland used to be a fairly normal sounding faith teacher. He taught, the word of faith, and
he was mainstream.
He
for a long time.
I've met him. I had his son at my youth camp. He was a fairly normal dude. He is so wacko now.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I think I saw a video where he cut himself and drank his own blood. And then he blew COVID. He blew COVID away. He laughed maniacally when someone said that Biden was president. He has gotten bat shit crazy.
He cray.
What happened to him? What in your view, what happens to a person like that?
Well,
how did he become that?
I can't see what he's thinking, what's happening in his mind. I do see him. I think he's a grifter. I really think he's a guy who has weaponized religion to fill. I mean, I think his net worth is on the order of $700 million. He's got his own private airport, for Pete's sake. You know what I'm saying? So I also think he has been so insular. It's not that he doesn't believe in God. He very well might believe, but I think he has constructed for himself an alternate reality. And I think over the course of decades, that weirdness has just become his normal. So
that's what's curious to me, though, because I think he used to be a fairly normal guy, and I just don't know how you go from that to become, because I agree with you. I believe he's a con artist. I believe he's raking in the money and he knows how to push the buttons, and none of it's real to him anymore. But I think at some point it was.
I agree. We used to watch Ken Copeland when I was growing up. My mom was a big Copeland fan. And his stuff was just straight up mainstream charismatic theology. There was none of this wild, wacky stuff that he's doing today. And so it could be anything. It could be part of the grift. It could be he has constructed his own alternate reality. It could be the delusion or it could be senility, for Pete's sake. I mean, the guy's pushing 80. So who knows what's going on? I can't speak to what's happening in his mind. All I know is this. I will say that many of the more extreme and wackadoodle things that we have seen from the evangelicals over the past 5 years, mixed with COVID, keeping people home from church, giving them a real good excuse not to have to go on Sunday mornings. They've decided they're discovering they're first of all rejecting all of this extremism. There are a lot of Christians who have just become disenfranchised and said, I don't need this. These people don't represent me. This is my value system. So they're checking out of the church, and the church is in full panic mode. On top of that, COVID gave them an excuse not to have to go to church on Sundays. So they got their weekends back, and they're like, hey, this is kind of awesome. I'm not interested really, and I'm doing fine without it. I don't really need to go back. So, I mean, you're seeing it in terms of attendance. You're seeing it in terms of ties. You're seeing it in terms of influence. The churches are in full panic mode. And so, one thing about the extremists that we are seeing, the Paula Whites, the Ken Copelands, the Jim Bakkers, etc., they have pushed a faction of Christians actually further toward us. And I'll certainly take that.
Yeah.
The irony too, I follow a few of these big apologists and evangelicals on Twitter, and they're talking about this ex-evangelical movement, but the irony is that they are not listening to any of the criticisms coming from these ex-evangelicals. They're making up all of these excuses why people are leaving, and it's like, no, it's because of you. I do have a question though, while we're talking about, the cult of personality around somebody like Ken Copeland. And I'm wondering if you see any parallels or how you would, differentiate between him and somebody like Alex Jones. Because I see them as very similar sort of caricatures that are making tons of money off of this. I mean, Alex Jones has to be a grifter. 100%. But at the same time, I always wonder, like, how much of this is like a joke that they are in on, and how much of this is them just being legitimately that untethered from reality.
I always say, and Dave can back me up, that people like to talk about preachers as if they're all scam artists and they're all filling their pockets tax-free and they're living the life. And the hard truth is, or actually it's not just the truth is, the vast majority of pastors are just everyday people on call 24/7, making a modest wage, doing what they love. They're good people and they're legit. Okay. So I'm not talking about them when I talk about the Ken Copelands of the world.
Yeah, of course.
But there is a prime opportunity in the faith, in the church, for the sociopath. We're talking about a culture that is wired for authoritarians. They are wired to see savior figures. They are wired for obedience. They are wired as well to donate their personal wealth because they believe it will gain them greater wealth in the life to come. So, I mean, if you find somebody who knows how easily co-opted the Christian model can be to make money and to have power and influence, I mean, it's a ripe field for that stuff. And I'm convinced there are tons of people who go in and they are worshiped as gods. They are God's proxy, and they fill their pockets, often tax exempt, and they know it's totally bogus, but they do it because they know the opportunity is there to do it. The P.T. Barnums are all out there waiting for their opportunities. Alex Jones, I honestly think the man's mentally ill.
Yeah.
I think he is, there is an abuse alarm flag, red flag, alarm, red flashing light. This man is dangerous. There's something about him that sets him off a little bit from Ken in my own mind.
He's on another level.
But he has followers. That's terrifying. There's a lot to be said about how people gravitate to strong figures who are authoritarian-ish, who are claimants to be the purveyors of truth and the preachers of truth with a capital T, who are sent by God and agents of God. There's a culture of people that are like, oh, great, he mentioned my God. Fine, I'm in. Okay, I'll trust you.
I'll believe whatever you say.
Faith causes that. Faith actually breeds authoritarianism, and it creates a ripe and fertile field for con artists, sociopaths, grifters, and authoritarians to come in and command the masses. masses for fun and profit and power.
Well, it's an easier, you don't have to think for yourself. Just do what the leader tells you to do. And it's an easier way to get through life. It's if you're wired that way. Some of us were just too inclined to ask too many questions, I think.
Yeah.
Let's take a call
go
from
ahead, brother.
Allison, the chaotic kitten, they in Canada. My province declared a public health state of emergency. How can we get through to the conspiracy-minded people? Hello, Allison. We've got just a couple of minutes because we have a strict shut-off time. How are you tonight?
Hey, I'm doing okay, all things considered.
So your
How
question
are
is,
you?
we're good. Your question is, how can we get through to the conspiracy-minded people? That's what I asked Seth. I'm asking him to fix the world tonight.
It's a lot like, how do I get through to the person I have who is, so off the chain over here politically? And I don't think we have the answer other than to try to set the example of rationality, to root ourselves in better ideas in full view of everybody else, and also bond together with people of like mind and like goals to try to, create the world we'd like to see. That's about all I've got.
Genevieve, do you have the answer?
I don't have the answer. I wish I could save the world, but I am not a miracle worker. I will say that I have gotten through to a few people, not entirely, but I've gotten to the point where they'll actually listen to me in good faith and sort of trust my opinion on these things, even if we differ. And honestly, that happened through years of being patient and polite and sort of letting them steamroll me at times, only to come back years later and say, once they got too extreme about this. There was a person I'm thinking of in particular who, towards the end of our conversations, in the midst of 2020, she had said that, I will never understand how much peril we're in with this new world order because I don't follow Jesus. I don't see all the warning signs of the coming apocalypse. I have been poisoned by the devil and I have no respect for my elders, and how dare I? And at that point, I brought the receipts. I said, listen, we've been speaking for years now. And look at how much grace I've extended to you. Look at how much kindness. Look at how often I've turned the other cheek while you've, treated me so poorly. How dare you claim that I, am this brainwashed whatever, when it is you who's been so cruel. And she got very embarrassed, and it was like the glass shattered. She said, wow, you're right. I have been horrible to you. How are you still talking to me? I'm so ashamed. Like, how, I said, it's important that we get through because I genuinely care. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to for me, was that the only way I was able to get through to somebody was by genuinely caring about them, genuinely listening, utilizing some street epistemology, but at the end of the day, understanding that it is not my responsibility to fix everybody else. And all I can do is carry myself with, the kindness and grace that I find appropriate. Or in some situations, telling somebody to get the fuck away from me if they are putting me at risk of contracting COVID and I don't feel like dealing with them. It's
say
hard.
it in love. You say that in
Yeah.
love, like a sister in the Lord.
Yes. Bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart. Get the fuck away from me.
Well,
Yeah. But unfortunately,
I just
we
gotta
don't
say
have years.
one thing though, is like I'm just getting so tired of isolating. Like, I don't have really any friends in the city I'm living in. Like, everybody I know is all in this community or like the Twitch leftist community. It's all online. And so like, generally, I don't have any close people around here, but it's like I have to isolate because if I get COVID, I'm going to die. And we've got, like, the last time I was out, there was all these people, no masks, no nothing. They don't care. And it's like, it's so frustrating. And I feel like I'm starting to go crazy, and I don't want to go crazy, obviously, but I want to move and I can't because that's suspended. And I'm so frustrated, and the government too. Like they opened up way too early back in July, so we could have our yearly rodeo thing, and it's just I'm at the end of my rope. And
Well,
it's
Allison, let me ask you this.
too.
Do you have people online, since you're isolated? Do you have people online that you can connect with, or that you are connected with, that are like-minded, or that you can relate with and have good relationships, even if it's virtual, so that you don't feel so isolated? Do you have those people in your life?
Kind of. Like I'm working on getting more relationships. A lot of them are not. A lot of them are in the States or like other places in Canada. So, like, I guess
Yeah, I
it
know.
doesn't help that
I know it can be hard to
am
find
not-
local people, but that's the beauty of the virtual world we live in now, is especially when we're isolated through a pandemic, or because of a pandemic. The beauty is that there are connections online that we can have, and you're not alone in that sense. There are people. I just came from a recovering from religion fall excursion, and most of the people that were there were from small towns all over the country, and they feel very isolated in their community because there aren't the like-minded people around them. But the opportunity to get together in person was awesome. But beyond that, there's the connection online that many of them have. If you're not involved with recovering from religion, I would very much suggest that you get connected there. There's a lot of people there that they have a weekly meeting that you can be a part of on a big Zoom call with usually about 100 people. So there's a lot of ways to connect even when you're isolated, if what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And, I know a lot of people who are
That's
immunocompromised too.
True, yeah.
Yeah. I guess I doubt this brings you any comfort. I hope it does. But, you are not alone in your frustration and in how difficult this has been. So
No,
many
it's
people are exactly where you are. And
a common problem. Yeah. Well, Allison, we'd love to have more time to chat, but we've got to run. We've got a very strict cutoff time here. We've only got a couple minutes left, but you hang in there, and thanks for the call.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Allison.
Yeah. Thanks, Allison.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye. Call us again sometime.
Seth,
Bye-bye.
when are we playing Phasmophobia left?
Allison knows me from my gaming channel. She is,
there you
plays a
go.
game called Phasmophobia, so I knew I recognized the name. We shall phas soon, my friend. I'll see you out there. Yeah,
this is a good time to obey Kristen and tell everyone about your Twitch channel. Seth, what's that about?
I don't play a lot. I was looking for some distraction. It's hard. I'm producing a weekly podcast. I'm doing video content, and I was traveling before COVID, and I'm working on this will be number 5 if you count Ghost Stories, and it's just about done, and blah, blah, blah. And, what do you do for fun? Well, I was weaned on the old Atari 2600, so I'm not a great gamer, but I thought it would be fun to actually, fire up a Twitch channel and play. And so we'll play, from time to time. I play a ghost hunting game called Phasmophobia. We'll play stuff like The Room, and
I've never got into that. So
Resident Evil and some other stuff.
I guess I'm too old.
Oh.
So what else you got coming up, Seth? Before we go, we got a couple minutes. What's on the agenda for you?
I've got some great podcasts coming up. October is our annual Ghost Stories show, which is always fun. That's going to air the second Tuesday in October. You can see the links to the podcast at thethinkingatheist.com. I'm going to be talking to Kristen Dumais, who is the author of a new book called Jesus and John Wayne.
Oh, yeah, I read that book.
Evangelical, right? She's a Christian, by the way. She's actually a biblical studies PhD, but she was kind enough to talk to me. So we're going to do a show together, kind of an interfaith thing going on there. I've got the Faithless Forum coming up November 19th weekend. That's going to be in Austin, Texas. Looks like we're going to continue. Looks like that's still on. And you can just Google Faithless Forum 2021 for details on that. But it'll be the first live event I've done since, I think, February of 2020.
Yeah.
And they're going to have some very strict COVID requirements for that. But it's still on.
I think I may come to that. I'm not sure yet. I may see
I
you
hope
there.
I get a chance to see you, brother. It'll be good to sit down and chat.
Well, I think we're speaking at a couple of conferences together next year. The one that got moved from Fort Wayne, and then there's one in Canada that's we're both on schedule there. So hopefully we'll get to see each other some point again.
There's nothing like being able to go. I mean, I enjoy speaking from the stage. That symbiosis with the audience is just really amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, I appreciate the chance to go out and do what I do, but mostly it's a reminder, you know, it's what Allison was talking about, to be in a room with people who don't think I'm broken or crazy or an agent of Beelzebub or whatever, going through a midlife crisis, for people who just, hey, it's Seth. We accept you. It's good to see you. You know, we love you. There's nothing like that feeling, the feeling of community that we get. And for those who haven't attended an event along those lines, when things do open up, I have every encouragement to you to
Absolutely
do so.
Yep.
You'll love it.
To me, it's not, I enjoy speaking or listening to a speaker, but the biggest reason I go to anything like that is just to have that connection, just to sit around and talk and laugh and chat with people who get it.
Yeah.
Who we're in this world together, walking side by side. And so I agree with you, Seth. Any chance you get, go.
Oh.
So that's cool, man. Everybody, thank you. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. And I'm really happy that I was able to help Seth build his channel coming on mine, because he needs all the
Give me the boost.
He's
Give
a little
me a signal boost, dude.
He's trying to get going. You guys go support him.
You'll make it one day.
You're very kind.
Thanks for like and subscribe, all the things. If you can, support us on Patreon. We the show costs money, just to let you know. So if you want to help donate that way, we'd appreciate it. But thanks for calling. Those of you who called, thanks for coming on. And next week we have Dr. Del Rey, Recovering from Religion, and he'll talk about that organization a little bit, and the excursion that we just came off of this past weekend. It was an incredible time of connecting with people and hearing from people. Seth, thank you so much for coming on, and just all the things you've done for me personally, the generosity you've shown me over the years, our friendship. I cherish it. I really do.
Well, it's an honor. It really is to be able to hang with you both here tonight too, and to be able to interact with the audience. Just know that you matter, that what you're doing is important, and it makes a difference. And you know, I think we're all doing what we can where we can. So to be a part of what you guys are doing here has been huge for me, and I thank you both very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And folks, that's our show for tonight. See you next week.
Yeah.